Hello, hello. My name is April Malone with Yes, I Work From Home, and this is the podcast. Today I have Eric Warner based out of La Crosse, Wisconsin. He was introduced to me by my previous guest, Emily Langer, and he's IT compliance with Kaplan Inc., based out of New York City. He's been working from home with them for 4 years. Why don't you tell us more about your story, Eric? Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I think it's cool to talk about working from home because it's something that so many people are doing and that weren't doing it before. It's changed a lot of things and it's not without its challenges, but I think we can succeed. Most of us can succeed at working from home. So I'm an IT compliance analyst, and I'm sure you're thinking, wow, that really sounds like a cool job.
Break it down for those of us who have never heard of this.
Right. So I work for a big company that's publicly held. So because it's sold on the stock is sold on the New York Stock Exchange, there are a number of regulations about keeping the financial data like reliable. It's kind of because of Enron. It was because of the big Enron crash, for those who remember, and it happened that the investors were getting information that wasn't actually accurate. So there's a number of laws that were passed. SOX, SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley is the one I primarily deal with. I have a law background. I was a practicing attorney for a while. I like this better. Anyway, so I have to make sure that the information that the IT department is conveying for finances is actually accurate and not corrupted or being manipulated from outside or inside. So that's what I do. That's what puts bread on my table.
How long have you been in this position?
In this position, I've been for it's almost 7 years. It'll be almost 7 years in March. So
you're not the first former lawyer that I think just 2 episodes ago I also had a former attorney.
Right.
So what led you to that job? What can you just kind of talk about your work history and how you ended up working from home?
Right. So I'll make it. I kind of have a long, complicated work history, but I'll do the best I can to make it somewhat short. So I was one of those non-graduating from college young people. I spent time in Mexico wandering around, and yeah, I'd work here and then take a couple of classes, and then I had a kid, and I was like, oh boy, I guess I need to get my show on the road. And up in that time, I was managing coffee shops. I was a coffee shop manager. I worked for Caribou Coffee in Minnesota.
Good
and
stuff.
Then good stuff, right? And then when I moved to California, I worked for Pete's Coffee in tea. And that's where my first daughter was born. And when I had my daughter, I was like, wow, I liked working in coffee shops. This isn't gonna work. I need to come up with a plan. And I went and I got my history degree from San Jose State. And then I was like, okay, I got my history degree. What am I going to do with that? So I decided law school was a good way to kind of jumpstart my career. So I went to law school and I wound up clerking in a place that did family law and criminal law. And I'm not well suited for those things. So I worked there for a while. It's very depressing. It's very difficult. Very draining. People who do family well are very good at putting up a barrier between their clients' problems and them, and I'm not good at that. So the pressure of like trying to get somebody's custody of their kids or keep somebody out of jail, it was just I didn't handle it well. I was very unhappy. So I started working. Right. It wasn't a good choice for me. So legal work tends to be very intense and very emotionally draining or really boring. Those are your two choices. And I decided boring is better than emotionally draining. Mm-hmm. So I worked for quite a few years as a bank compliance officer for a bank, a growing bank in Winona. And then I took over their title and abstract company, which they then sold. And I wound getting into consulting for a while, and then I landed at Kaplan. And I'm not like an IT person, an expert. I've picked up a few things, but I'm good at auditing. I'm good at compliance. So that's why they hired me. And I'm still no expert on the nuts and bolts of IT things, but I've picked up enough to know the right questions to ask and things like that. So it's a very reliable job. It's a very much more of an 8 to 5 job. And, occasionally I have to work more, but it doesn't have that intensity. It's got good benefits. It's very steady. I don't have to do billable hours or anything like that. So it's a lot more relaxed than what I was doing.
I think it just goes to show how, we're in our, I guess, midlife era of our working career. That, a career can take many turns and, go up and down and around a few times before you really settle. Do you feel like you found you're hitting a good stretch right now?
I think so. My wife and I were both divorced previously, which caused some economic complications and dealing with kind of the fallout from that. Not to get too personal or anything like that. So I really feel like I need to earn a pretty good living right now to kind of get through that time. So if is this my dream job? It was like, wow, I just really want to do IT compliance. It's just like, I'd rather work in a craft brewery, or I'd rather write or teach or something like that. But I need more money than that, to be frank. So it's a very good choice. It's got good benefits. The retirement stuff is good, and it's not a hostile work environment or anything like that.
Yeah.
So for right now, it's a good choice. It's a good choice.
You can look forward to the brewery and writing in your retirement.
That's what I'm hoping. Yeah.
I feel like before we started recording, you also mentioned at some point that you had done some adjunct teaching.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was a professor. I taught ethics for quite a few years at the local community college here. So that was really cool.
And that's how you didn't know Emily through that. You knew Emily from you knew her parents growing up.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Right. In Winona, before I moved here to La Crosse. So,
all right.
And I still know them.
Right. Okay. So don't forget to listen to Emily's episode, which was the previous one, before this one. Okay. Let's go ahead.
That Emily.
Yes. Yeah. And actually we were talking we realized that we probably have never met in person. We just have known each other because, through my cousin Ryan, who was my first episode. Let's talk a little bit about your journey working in an office to going from home. How did that come about? Was that a decision that they made or you made, and how did it go for you?
Right. So my particular department or team, there are 4 of us on the team, and none of us work in the same location. So there's one person in Florida. My boss was in New York. One of the other people was in New York, and then there's me in La Crosse. So we were always people who met online. I've worked with 2 of the people on my team for years and never met them face to face. I've met my boss a couple of times face to face. So for us, the transition from being in the office to working remotely was pretty easy, because that was something we'd really been doing before anyway. Mm-hmm. So before COVID, we'd kind of all agreed that it was better to be in the office sometimes, but then you could work from home too. So virtually all my time at Kaplan, I was in a transitional schedule where I would be in the office 3 days a week, and then I'd work from home 2 days a week.
Okay. And that was something that you picked or that they picked?
It was something I picked. So I liked working at home, and I kind of like going into the office too. I mean, you get the whole, hey, you can talk to people and interact, come over. And if you have a question about something, you can go over and ask them face to face instead of having to, rely on getting a hold of them some other way. And, I made friends there too.
But this wasn't your team. These were just people that were in the office.
Yep. There were people Oh, go ahead.
Did you have to have meetings with them also?
Yes. So we met online. My boss is very, very good at being in charge of what's going on without being a micromanager. So she was very good at finding ways to kind of, without looking over her shoulder all the time, still being in touch with what we were doing. So we met as a team once a week and individually with her once a week. And then she had, spreadsheets and stuff like that. So we were doing very well pre-COVID, not ever meeting together as a group.
And
So
this was the team of 4 people that were New
4 people.
York and okay.
Yeah,
But what about the people in the office that you would say hey to? Were you having meetings with them as well?
sometimes. So for example, if they were switching out some servers or something like that, and then I could meet with them face to face. And sometimes it was very informal. I would just walk over and talk to them. Hey, I hear you're going to do this, or you're going to change that, or this system's going to be decommissioned, or whatever. And then sometimes we'd meet face to face. But even then, a lot of people didn't work in the office. They were kind of, La Crosse is not a very big community, and to get people with the skills that they needed for some of this stuff, we had a guy in France, we had people in Italy, somebody from Brazil. So it was so we did a lot of online meetings even then. And then some face to face, but, or both. I mean, you'd be in a conference room with 5 people you worked with in La Crosse, and then there'd be 5 people who were scattered all over the globe. So Kaplan was technology savvy and good at doing that kind of thing prior to COVID, honestly.
Would you sometimes be meeting with a group of 5 people in another country in a conference room, and then some of you would be like in offices and some of you would be at home?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Which was kind of tricky sometimes, but we made it work. I mean, we made it work. Time zones are a problem, obviously. I remember the guy who was in Australia had to get up basically at like 1 a.m. or something heinous like that to be in the meetings.
Yeah.
But
and have you ever had to work the funny hours to meet with those folks on the other side too?
A couple of times. Yeah, there's we have quite a few people in India, and a lot of them do work kind of more our hemisphere hours just to work, but not all of them do. So I've had to get up at like 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning to meet with people, and from somebody from Europe too. So yeah,
sometimes
that wasn't great. Yeah, sometimes you have to make it work.
Yeah, so. I was waking up at 1, 2, or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning for the last 3.5 years, 4 years, as I was teaching English, mostly for people in, say, like mainland China, Taiwan, Japan. So I know what that's like to do it consistently, but if it's not consistent, if it's not part of your routine, it's almost like it hurts more.
Oh, absolutely. It was bad. I mean, I don't function well at 1 a.m, 2 a.m at all.
I host an international Zoom meeting for children's entertainers, primarily like balloon twisters. And we have a woman from Germany, and our meeting starts at 2 a.m. her time right now.
Oh, yikes.
And she's there. She's like, good morning from Germany, because, that's for fun. Like she's doing that for, the community, but when it's for work.
You don't have clowns in that meeting, do you?
We have people who kind of function as a lot of different things. Clowns, definitely one of them.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I mean, it's entertaining. I'm actually not really a children's entertainer, but my daughter is learning some of those skills, and I help host the meeting, and I have learned a lot, actually, like not just about literally balloon twisting, but like business, how they manage a lot of the weird things that come up. Like, if you have like this balloon twister who's like out in public at some festival and you got 100, 200 people online waiting for them, when their paid time is up and they're not like allowed to accept tips or something like that, they have to leave. And, how do you handle having 200 people left in line who are disappointed that they didn't get something?
You leave fast.
There's a lot of tricks. Sometimes they'll like pull out a bag of like soccer balls, like balloons that are twisted into like a soccer ball, and just kind of like release them.
And then run for it.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds
They'll
great.
actually hand that bag to someone else, and then everyone will swarm that someone else, and then they can make their exit.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. So like if my daughter is going to get into this world, like as someone else, I might have to like help her, in some of those more like crowd control type things. And so I've learned a lot about just like products and like sourcing things and distribution and, like shipping internationally. Like sometimes there's a lot there. So anyway, yeah, people are just even managing the time zones. Like for me to be like, our meeting is going to be at, 6 p.m. Arizona time, but Arizona doesn't change the clocks like everyone else does. So I need to keep track of when everyone else changes their clocks, because their meeting time will change because we're using mine to be consistent.
Thanks.
And so at some point, people show up an hour late because I messed something up and I didn't tell them, because international daylight savings times happen at different times. Like Australia and England, or I guess UK, change at different times than the US sometimes.
I'm not a fan of it, to tell you the truth. I think we should all just leave time alone.
I think so too. I agree. Let's talk about how it's going with you working from home, and you also have someone else in your household. Do you interrupt each
Yes.
other? Or you want to talk a little bit about how that's going with your wife?
Yes. So my wife and I got married just as COVID really got going.
Oh
So
gosh.
right before that. So and then she's a medical coder, so she works from home too, upstairs, and I'm down here. So it's nice to have, and we don't have little kids. And
Mhm.
I think if there were little kids here, that would be very difficult.
Yeah.
But it's really been great. I mean, I think everybody should get married during a pandemic and work from home together, because it's a great way to like really get to know each
Bond
other well,
quickly.
bond quickly, right?
So had
Um,
she been working from home on purpose, or was that something that was like a effect of the pandemic?
so she'd been working at home on purpose. So they allowed it. She had to come into the office, every now and again for no particularly great reason. And we can talk about that a little bit, about how managers struggle with people working remotely, and they're like, I want to control you because I just want you there where I can see you, where I don't think you're working.
Happy
Um,
employees have autonomy.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so we do distract each other. So like if one of us is in the chatty mood, and I think it falls on me more because I have to go upstairs like consciously, because there's nothing I need up there except for her. So if I'm like, I really want to talk about something that happened at work, or some cool bird I saw out the window, or whatever it is, I go up there to talk to her. But she comes down here to like get lunch or get coffee or whatever. So I feel like she's coming and going, and sometimes she's distracting. I won't lie. I mean, because I'd rather talk to her than work.
Mhm.
Um, but people in the office distracted me too. I had the guy who wanted to talk about the football game for 30 minutes, and the woman next to me who wanted to tell me about her kids' lives for an hour and a half a day, and they were distracting too. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily more. I'd rather be distracted by my wife than them.
I think I'm the chatty one usually, in the office setting, that I just really value building community and connections
Hmm.
and learning about people and hearing their stories. So I ask questions too. Um, but yeah, being focused at work is tricky when you want that social aspect, but you also need to keep your productivity up. What kind of workflow do you have? Is it like, do you have to do so many widgets a day, or how does that work?
No, it's very much I'm not hourly, and my boss is not the kind of person who's like, did you put in your 8 hours today? All she cares about is me getting my job done. It's
Mhm.
not a particularly easy job, and she is a what's the word I'm trying to, it's not a negative word, but she's not one to let you slack on the job. I mean, she's aware of like what your productivity is, because she has ways that she can see that, what kind of work are you getting done? Is this done? Is that done? So she's much less interested in what time I start or what time I stop or any of that stuff. If I take an hour lunch or a half an hour lunch, I mean, she just kind of trusts that we're adults and we're going to do that, when we're just going to get the job done. And if you work for 5 hours during the day and then take a break and then come back and do 2 hours at night, she doesn't care, as long as you're
Okay.
around for meetings. So, which is nice. I really appreciate that. My wife's job is very different. So she has to do a certain number of charts a day.
Yeah.
So I can be more distracting if I let myself, because I have more autonomy, if that makes
Okay.
sense. So
That
yeah.
does. So I did medical transcription for 17 years,
Oh yeah.
and 10 of those were from home. And I have a feeling that I wonder if her work setup is similar a little bit to what I had when I was working with more like I had to work in a home office. I couldn't like
Hmm.
take a laptop around town because I needed to be through like these special servers. Does she have any of those extra like protections?
She does. She has HIPAA because of HIPAA.
Yep.
She needs to have the door closed. So if I go in, I have to knock first, and she
Yeah.
has to. I can't
Close her
see the
screen.
screen and use screen and everything like that. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
She can see anything I'm working on, but she can't understand it.
I think that's kind of how it works with my husband. I have literally no idea what's happening on his computer.
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah, and I remember always having that rule that, we had to lock the screen if you were going to walk away, even for a minute, because, what if something happened, and what if someone had to come into the house? What if it was like emergency responders or whatever?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
that's
let's
my
talk about,
wife up on the screen.
yeah.
My coworkers
Oh,
are all looking at all the details about her history, and
yeah, that can be problematic.
yeah.
What about some of the pros, like the good parts of being able to work from home with your wife?
So we walk every day. We have a couple friends who come and join us sometimes, but pretty much every lunch hour we walk, and that's awesome. It's a great way to kind of go outside, get some exercise. We live in a good area. There's some great bluffs and hills like right where we live.
Oh,
So
right. Yeah. I
mm,
mean, I know maybe more like the Minnesota side of like some of those bluffs, but it's gorgeous out there.
it is. It's gorgeous. So we want to just take a walk, we go down to a pond and go around it, and that's really pretty. Or if we want something more strenuous, we hike up the side of the hill, and that's more vigorous. And
Yes.
yeah, it's awesome to be able to do that. When you walk, you're not really distracted by anything else, so it's a great time to kind of like talk about what's going on in your life and have some good quality time conversations.
My husband and I
And
started walking more recently too. Go ahead.
oh no, and that's great. I mean, you get your exercise together, and but I was saying one of the other things about working at home that's so great as a couple too is you can kind of pick where you want to live. You're not restricted by access to your office. So my office has been totally deconstructed. Everybody at Kaplan is now is now a remote employee, almost
Really?
without exception. Yeah. So they're closing all the offices, except where students come to meet and stuff like that. But all the office space, everyone's been sent home and been remote. So, I mean, yeah, we could pretty much live anywhere, and that's kind of cool. So we don't have to be in a specific location.
I interviewed someone earlier on, I think episode 4, Matthew Stubblefield. He was working for a company where basically at least his location didn't have an office for several years, and then they eventually got like a small workspace. But the one thing that he said as a manager, C level, I think, was mail needs to go somewhere. And so it was like
Yeah.
coming to his house. And I've had a few people mention that. So even your boss is working from home now?
Yep. And my boss works. She works part of the time from Florida and part of the time from New Jersey, and commutes back and forth and works from both those places. So you're right. There are a couple places, offices that still have a physical location with a very small number of people working at it, but I'd say like 95% of the workforce has
Can
been
you
sent home.
could you talk a little bit about what specifically Kaplan does? You mentioned students.
Right. So Kaplan has three kind of major functions. Um, One of them, the lacrosse one, was professional testing, like for real estate licensing and insurance licensing and certified financial professional licensing. So you take the classes to get ready for those sort of professional licensing.
Okay.
There's another division that does test prep. So like if you're doing the GMAT or the law school LSAT, you go in and do that, and that some of that's still on site, and a lot of it's online now too. But
Mhm.
so you'll do the questions like LSAT questions over and over and over again. And Kaplan has a lot of experience in how to prep people for those tests, and they have a very good help, ratio in terms of like, yeah, my LSAT score went up by 10 points, and now I got into a better law school, or I got a scholarship. And then the third part was they had a for-profit university, but they were getting uncomfortable with that for the for-profit university sort of reputation wasn't that great. So they actually wound up selling that part to Purdue University, which is a respected university.
Yep.
So they do online, they do the online schooling with Kaplan as kind of a partnership, but it's actually Purdue University professors and things like that. So
Okay.
yeah, so those are the three major parts of Kaplan.
So I suppose your background in teaching also probably helped
A
as
little
you got this
bit.
position. Yeah.
Yep, it did. It did.
I'm looking, so for those of you that can not see the video, I'm looking at his background here. Eric has a Christmas tree to one side and a bookshelf that has lots of books on another side with a lamp. And then I see another one that has a lot of decor. What kind of room are you sitting in right now?
This room is, it's got a couch, a big couch over to the right, which, by the way, on the occasional lunch hour, we do naps instead of walking.
Nice.
So,
Yep.
which is really, that's another benefit from working from home.
I've taken probably thousands of lunch naps in my life.
Oh, they're the best, right? You can't take a lunch nap at work. Um, so I have a window to my left, which is really important, in a little balcony, and that I can go out there and have coffee, take a break, and I can look out the window and I can get that natural light, which is huge for me, especially this time of year.
Oh yeah.
So that I always struggled in offices because I never felt like I got enough natural light. And IT people hate light because it interferes with screens. So it's like living in a dungeon with no natural light at all. And then they're happy if it's just like a
Dark.
cave. And that did not work well for me. So yeah, I've got I got my Christmas tree behind me and stuff, and the kitchen's over that way. That's where the coffee is and my lunch and everything like that. So, and then that out that side door is, we're right against a bluff, so there's all kinds of nature stuff going on out there. So I can go and look at the bird feeder if I want to, and we get possums and skunks and all kinds of critters there. So it's a cool environment because there's a lot going on here. So
In my guest interest form, one of the questions is regarding, do you have any, I'll just find it really quick. If you've done or created anything notable or impressive in the past or recently, and you accidentally left it out of your bio, now is the time to tell us, let it all out here. And he said, I was the 7th person in Minnesota to see a rock wren in the state. Can you talk about that? You said that was back in the day.
yes. So I've been a bird watcher all my life, which is cool because even at 53, I'm still kind of young to be a bird watcher.
Oh,
Which I can't really say that about many other things, but I got started as a teenager, so I'd go on do bird watching things, and I was the youngest person by like 40 years sometimes. So I was up in Minneapolis and I was bird watching, and I saw a bird that I couldn't figure out what it was. It was right by Cedar Lake in Minneapolis, and I looked it up in a bird book and found it was a rock wren, which is a very, very rare bird in Minnesota. And so I was interviewed by the Minnesota Ornithological Society to see that my record was valid, and it was. It went before a board and they approved my sighting and my description. So I am officially the 7th person in Minnesota to see a rock wren. So
I love it. And you said that it was before like cell phones. So it's not like you could just snap a picture.
right, they didn't expect you to have a picture of everything. Now they do. Now if you don't have a picture, it's suspect. But back then it was not. It was not. So
But then you told me that these birds are common in Arizona.
they are. You go west, southwest, they're very common. So you've probably seen rock wrens and not even known it, especially if you're.
Probably. I'm
Mhm.
not I'm not very in tune to my birds. I know like the big ones. I have a little 6-year-old who was drawing birds the other day, and she's like, what does a robin look like? And so she drew a beautiful robin. And so we just kept Google imaging every single bird that she could think of, and she would draw a cute picture of it. And I'd like to frame those someday. They're really cute.
That's awesome. Do you have roadrunners around where you live?
Yes, we just
That's
saw
so
one
cool.
like literally running down the road one day, and we're like, what is that? And then we're like, meet me, like, oh my goodness, that's like a roadrunner in real life. And so I have a video of my like young children kind of like following it. And yeah, there's one in this neighborhood as well. We see them occasionally, a few times a year, I'll see them just like literally in the neighborhood. And we don't get out to like the hiking locations very much yet. I think that's something that we're going to have to explore. We're only about
Mhm.
5 or 6 years into Arizona and just like gradually starting to make our way, to the cool places. You
Right.
visited Tucson when you visited Emily's parents. Did you
I
see
did.
more rock runs?
I did not see any rock runs. I saw a canyon run, but I did see my first road runner, which was really cool. So, and like four or
in,
five other birds I've never seen. So that was
in
neat.
the wild, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you travel, do you work on the road?
I do sometimes. So I like, for example, my wife has gone to conferences and I've gone along because, hey, it's traveling and traveling is always good. So I have, just as I can take my laptop and as long as I can VPN, which I can, the system's safe, then I can work from anywhere. So I've done that. We've talked about living in Barbados for 3 months, and my boss is fine with it. She's like, "That's no problem. As long as you have reliable internet, that's all we care about."
Yeah.
So,
And it's not your permanent address. I think that sometimes when it's your permanent address, it can change things, especially taxes.
oh, very much so. Yeah, yeah.
Um, when I worked for Mayo Clinic, if I physically worked on site, I had to sign in with different like a tax ID
Hmm.
than when I worked from my home office in Missouri or Illinois or Arizona or wherever I happened to be living at the time. So yeah, make sure you check with HR, but yeah, that's awesome if they are flexible on that. Barbados.
It's true. Working different states can be a nightmare in tax time. When I was a consultant, I had to do taxes in multiple states, and I was like,
I
wow,
think 3 or 4 was my 3, but
yeah, that's
it
terrible.
basically prohibits you from being able to use like plain old like TurboTax. Like this is too
Hmm.
much. And you have to pay
Right,
more.
exactly. Very true.
we
Very true.
we finally got a tax lady and we've never looked back.
Good to know.
What would be the goal of Barbados? To just relax and work, or would you take time off as well?
Yes. So there's always like the time after. So because you still have little kids, right?
Hmm.
So the idea of like time off after work is kind of a foreign thing, right? It doesn't really exist.
I just
Um,
laugh.
right. It's like it's just work, a different kind of work, until you're so exhausted you fall asleep, and hopefully your kids do before you do, so you lose like 10 minutes to yourself or something,
in
right?
in my world, my kids usually go to bed after me because I was working
Uh,
those crazy hours all the time. They'd put
oh
me to
yeah.
bed. Yeah, but
And
more recently, I'm starting to get a couple hours after their bedtime. Like we've been watching the Mandalorian
oh, nice,
series. Yeah,
nice. We're big into Wheel of Time right now. We're liking that. Yeah.
I need to look into that.
Yeah, it's good. So you're working in Barbados and you don't have kids living with you. I mean, imagine this fantasy world, right? So you're done with work and then you're like, okay, well, we can just go down to the beach and hang out, until we're ready for bed, or we can,
Nice.
go down to the little rum shop, or we can go play a game, or so yeah, we'd explore and kind of vacation while we're working, if that
Will
makes sense.
her company be as flexible as yours for the location change?
Good question. So they are changing quickly, just because like a lot of companies, medical coders are in demand, especially in certain areas, and they're like, okay, if we want to keep people, we need to change things.
Mhm.
So
Retain their talent.
right. And a lot of companies want their employees in the office for really bad reasons. But so her hospital is changing quickly. So now they're saying, yeah, you can. Originally, you had to be within 10 minutes or 10 miles of the hospital,
No
and now it's
way.
like, yeah, absolutely, because you need to come in for some reason. But post COVID, COVID's changed so many things about online, working remotely, and everyone's getting more comfortable with it. So now you can be within like a 5 or 6 state radius, and they're talking about you can work from anywhere as long as you're
Nice.
reliable and yes, or so yeah.
The reliable internet thing is a thing. Like that is like I think you need to know what the backup plan is. Like if if my internet's going to fail, and it does, like even in metro areas, it's going to fail at some point.
Right.
Are you allowed to hotspot? What hotspot package could you use? Like, so you don't pay overage charges and all of that. Do I need to have two routers? Like, can I use
Mhm.
Wi-Fi? May I work from a coffee shop or do they still have internet cafes?
I don't think so. I think the
I think
last
those are
internet
coffee shops
cafes,
now.
they're
Yeah.
coffee shops now, right? Except,
Yeah.
although I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of them will kick you off after like an hour.
You
So
have to
they're
keep
not
buying something.
right, exactly. So they're not happy with you just hanging out, working all
Uh,
day. They want you out of there in an hour. So
you buy a coffee and then you buy a cookie and then you buy a
uh,
sandwich. Yeah.
then it's time for
Um,
lunch and
I guess the new thing is the remote, oh goodness, help me out. The co-working spaces. That would be the new coffee shop.
yeah, I
You're
agree.
familiar with those, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Um,
They
we
might have
Kaplan
that
does
in
not have.
Barbados.
They might, it's very
Yeah.
possible. And I know there's people who like them because
Mhm.
they give a sense of community. I mean, you are missing something when you don't go to the office too. It's not all good.
Yeah,
It has more pluses than minuses as far as I'm concerned. But
I agree.
I do feel more disconnected with some of the new people I've never met face to face.
Mhm.
Um, I don't go out with my coworkers happy hour, which I didn't really do that much often anyway, but I did every once in a while. And, I know I don't do that anymore. And we try to have like online social hours and stuff like that. And they're better than nothing. And I think they do help, but I miss sometimes that community. And I think a lot of other people do too.
It's not all roses, that's for sure. Now, when you are living with someone who is also working from home and that's working for you too, you have
Hmm.
someone to have community with. I think
Very
that
much so.
people,
Yeah.
who are single, have pros that people who have small children don't, and vice versa. Like I feel like I have my needs met in the fact that I'm with people all day, every day, whether or not they're my family or friends.
Hmm.
Where someone who is, say, single, living alone, working alone, is going to have to be way more intentional about being in public or something like that if they're working from home.
Absolutely. And COVID has been so hard on single people's mental health has been so, affected. And I was fortunate. I was here with my wife the whole time,
Your new bride.
my new
Yeah.
bride. And it was great. But I knew people who were single and really struggled. It was like, wow, I feel like my mental health's just gone down the drain. And, meeting with people on Zoom is just not the same. I mean, it's better than nothing, but we need that contact. So yeah, it's hard. I mean, and some of those people like being in the office, and it's hard to give that up. So yeah, it's not for everybody. It's definitely not.
And it's just different for everybody. You've got the people, my husband, perfectly happy to be home all the time. Perfectly happy. It's
Mhm.
great. Um, People who have small children and we're trying to juggle them, and there's online school or homeschooling or whatever during the pandemic, had a different level of stress, a different kind of, difficulty. We've
Yeah.
talked about pros and cons of working from home, and you just said there's more pros than cons. Are there any other things that you've struggled with that you've maybe overcome in the last few years?
So I realized I'd spent 60 days working in shorts and a t-shirt or something like that I'd not worn anything else for 60 days, which was kind of cool. But it was like, I kind of miss wearing something else. I got so I did so. And it does help, the people who say when you dress up for work, even when you're working from home, it kind of helps. I mean, you're working in your pajamas all day sounds great, but maybe it's not the greatest thing. So that's definitely a challenge. I know it's been a challenge for my community with so many big companies not having people working downtown because it's really hurt the community itself.
Oh, like
So
the small
that's been
businesses.
yeah, like the coffee shops and the restaurants where people aren't going out to lunch like they were, and they're not going out for coffee, and that's been depressing to see. It's
Yeah.
hurt my community, and that's definitely a con. So yeah, and sometimes it's hard. You can't communicate everything about work with people by email or IM, or even meeting them as well as you can, meeting face to face with them. So I do think it inhibits the creative process sometimes, and it also it makes it harder to connect with people. They can be meaner to you if they've never met you before and like blow you off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So are
true.
you, just a question back for you, would you consider yourself to be an introvert or an extrovert, or are you one of those more complicated people?
Oh, I'm so an extrovert. I mean, I think over the years as I've, gotten older,
Mm-hmm.
I have appreciated alone time a little bit better. Uh, but even when I'm alone, I still kind of like to stay busy. Like oftentimes I'm still communicating with people. So definitely I'm the social person in the family. I think even more than my children.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always trying to convince someone to come with me, to like even to have someone in the car with me if I'm going to drive to run errands, because I just like talking. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's one of the main reasons that we have the podcast, is because I want to have the conversations for me, and also so that other people can hear, like the stories, like so that you don't feel alone. Because I'm imagining that people do work from home and they're like, man, I'm dealing with this thing, and I wonder if I'm like the odd one out here.
Yeah.
um like a lot of people came home with like back pain, or like are still working off of a not ideal setup. And other people, I just Emily is really happy with her folding table, but she's using like the riser, and she's got the external
Mm-hmm.
keyboard and mouse and things, so that she's more ergonomic about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also just really fascinating to me how different strokes for different folks kind of thing, like the things that match one person won't match the next person. So my husband is introvert, to the extreme level, to the same degree that I am an extrovert, maybe. And he needs more downtime than I do. Like he in the evening needs to decompress. He likes being around and like the kids coming in and showing him something, but he also likes working alone. I would like to work next to him, and he'd be like, no, no, thanks. I actually have a desk set next to him, but I use it sparingly
That's
because I know
awesome.
I would probably distract him too. I usually like to wrap things up by just asking, what tips and tricks do you have that you would recommend for someone who's thinking about working from home for the first time? What are some things that have been really important to you that you'd like to share?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, think of it again in terms of like your lifestyle. We had a neighbor who moved here from our next door neighbor she moved here from somewhere else, Michigan, I think. Didn't know anybody in La Crosse right as COVID hit.
Hmm.
She had to work from home and she was having such a hard time. She didn't know anybody and she was extremely lonely. So if that's going to be you and you have the choice not to work from home, don't do it. I mean, if your mental health is really going to suffer from being isolated, it's probably not the right choice for you. The other point I think I'd like to make is make your environment. You're going to spend a lot of time, 40 hours a week, probably in your environment. I spend 40 hours a week sitting at this desk. That sounds so depressing, but I like distractions. I play D&D, so I've got D&D things to look at. When I have a little downtime, I've got, coffee cups and I've got little gizmos. And, I like having, as long as my space is somewhat organized, I like having distractions. I like seeing birds out the window. I like having a tree next to me. From what I know of like what Emily talks about, she's more of a minimalist and she likes not to have that kind of stuff. My workspace would drive her crazy and hers would drive me crazy too. So
Hmm.
make it about you, and then make sure you got a comfortable chair, and make sure ergonomically you're not. You know, I have a cousin who works for National Geographic, and she had this famous thing. She got stuck at home because she had to work at home, and it was so noisy. She had a toilet office, she called it. So the only place that was quiet enough for her to work on her computer was by putting her laptop on the toilet and working in the bathroom. It was like, okay, that's not going to work in the long run. You need to have something else, some other kind of setup. So if you work from home, you spend a lot of time in your environment. So make sure it's not surrounded by, you're not on top of the cat box and closed off in some dark corner if you like natural light. So just, yeah, think about what would make your environment pleasant. And if you need to take a 15-minute break and go out and walk around for a minute or call a friend or something like that, just something to make your work experience pleasant, because life's hard enough without having you hate the space that you're in. So
Right.
that makes
Right.
sense.
It does. And I sometimes hate the space that I'm in, and I have to address that. So
Right.
it just makes me want to work other places, which aren't going to be necessarily as comfortable or productive.
Right. Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
any other final thoughts?
No, I think as a manager, you can make working from home or working remotely work for your team. You don't have to be freaked out by, by micromanaging everybody. If you'd like to do that, maybe it's time to think a little bit about giving your people a little more autonomy and trusting them. They're going to appreciate it. And yeah, you can work from home and make it great, not just good. Everything's got challenges or pluses and minuses, but it can be a truly awesome thing, especially if you just get married.
Yes. Eric, do you have like a LinkedIn or anything that people could find you at if they wanted to ask a question about Kaplan or anything like that?
Yes, I am on LinkedIn as Eric Warner. So Eric Warner.
Okay, I'll put the link then into your show notes if that's all right with you.
That is very okay. Yeah, no problem.
All right.
We should
Well,
probably be LinkedIn friends anyway, right?
That's absolutely true. I need to make sure I friend everyone else that's interviewed if they'll let me.
Right.
Or connections. Do they call them connections on LinkedIn?
I think they do, yeah.
Yeah.
Or network or something. Maybe it's network. Something like that. So
Something more professional sounding.
yeah,
Well,
right.
thank you, Eric. This has been Eric Warner and April Malone with Yes, I Work From Home, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.